What's going on, the Nurse RX fam? I am not Aleisha. As you can see, I am Cedric. I'm her husband. And she talked me into it. She finally got me here on the channel. She finally got me here to speak to you and share my perspective of some health things that I have personally been going through in my life over the last, year, 2 years, or what have you. Specifically today, I'm going to tell you about my journey with being diagnosed with prostate cancer. And I hope to be as thorough as possible, as specific as possible, because at the end of it all, I hope that I help somebody. That's ultimately why I'm here. For no other reason, I just hope that I can lend a voice, that I can share something or say something to someone that'll help you on this journey, or give you some information to maybe start down this path. Let me go back and let me kind of talk about this from the beginning. For the most part in my life, I've been relatively pretty healthy. I really have been blessed with, there were years that I would have in my life where I would barely get a common cold. And, that's been kind of who I've been. But as you get older, things change. Things change in your body. And I always say with your health, you never know what's going on inside of you until you do a little digging and do a little research. And that's why I hope that this video at the end really helps a man out there that to catch something like this early is so key and so important, and not just prostate cancer, but any type of cancer or any type of disease in general. So I'm going to go back and talk about what I think probably actually helped me and saved me, and it was my father. So my father, early in his life, I guess he was I'm really guessing, probably in his 50s at the time. I am guessing. But he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Now, my father is no longer with us. He's deceased, has been for many years. He did not pass away from prostate cancer. He actually passed away from a heart condition that he actually was born with. But because he had prostate cancer, I always say that probably helped me in being intentional about getting checked. So from the age of 35, and I can remember this vividly from the standpoint, when my dad passed away, it put in a chain of thought in my mind about a lot of things. As you get older anyway, in general, you start thinking about your mortality. And I knew he had prostate cancer, even though he did not pass away from that. But it made me very intentional to say I need to make sure, because it's in my family. If you're African American, if you're Black, we're at the highest rates of potentially getting prostate cancer. And then as you get older, 40 years or older, we're at really high risk. And so from 35 on, all the way to my current age, I'm currently 52. From 35 on, I was getting prostate checks. Yes, I started at 35. And that was because of my dad. That was because I knew it was in my family. I knew he had it. And I just wanted to be proactive, and I wanted to start early. And I'm going to tell you how things have changed with exams. And maybe not changed. It just really depends on your primary care physician. So in the early part, when I started getting these exams, it was purely rectal exam. It's the reason why, let's be honest, a lot of men, we did not want to do it. We did not want anyone sticking us in the butt, in the fingers, or what. We didn't want to do it. It was just something about it is uncomfortable, even the thought of it. And so we were not going down that road. We're not getting checked. But I knew because it was in my family, I had to do it. So I started early. And so there are a lot of primary care physicians that they don't even do the rectal. But I think if you have a really good doctor, I think it's good to kind of get both. The PSA is when they take blood and they're checking for your what's called your PSA level. and there's a range you're supposed to be in. And so that range in your PSA, I think it's supposed to be between 2 to 4 or something like that, is considered a normal range. And anything outside of that range, higher than that, is cause for concern, or at least to start investigating. And so I was getting those rectal exams early on from 35 on until I started getting doctors who were like, we don't do that anymore. I just checked the PSA. So every annual physical, I was specifically asked my PCP, please, let's get my PSA results so I know that I'm in range. And every year, like clockwork, I was always in range. I was good. So proactive on that part. And I have to thank my dad, just because he had it, it made me think about it. And for a lot of men, I just want to say this, especially a lot of black men, I know you may not be the doctor type person. You'll go to the doctor. You feel like ignorance is bliss, but it's not. If you're 40 years or older, and maybe even younger, like I said, if you have a history in your family, get checked. Just get an annual. If you do nothing else, just get an annual physical. Just if you did nothing but go to the doctor but once a year, did an annual, and ask for that PSA check or that prostate exam check, whichever one they do, rectal or PSA or both, which is very comprehensive, do that, because that probably maybe saved me. And so so let me go down the road and tell you about the journey and where I'm at now and what's next, and I'll try to be in some detail. So where did it start? What were the symptoms? How did I even get down the road to getting into that diagnosis? Well, actually, I'm gonna be honest, in 2020, you couldn't even go get a regular annual physical. So 2020 was a scratch. So I didn't. That was the first year in many years I hadn't had an annual. And then in 2021, or at the end of 2020, I found out about a heart condition that I have. And I won't go into details about that in this video. I promise I'll come back and make you a full-blown video just to talk about that diagnosis and what's going on with that as well, to hopefully help somebody. But I was so focused for about 2.5 years or 2 years or so on my heart that I just forgotten about the rest of my body for the first time for about 2 years. And so my wife said to me, she said, you've been so focused on this heart situation that you got going on. You haven't had an annual physical in over 2 years now. You probably want to get back to that. And I said, you're right. So I went back. I actually changed PCPs to a different one. And let me just say this about doctors too, about your primary care doctor. If you don't have one, men, and you're looking to get one, it is no different than anything else you're shopping for. There are reviews out there. Look at those reviews for your doctors. See what other patients are saying about them. A couple of things you want to look for. Like for me, I want my doctors to be detail-oriented. I want them to have great bedside manner, meaning they care about patients. They really do care about the patient. I don't want a doctor that's just like, I'm just another number. I want a doctor that has a real relationship with me and I'm comfortable with, and I can have a conversation with them about anything I'm going through. You shouldn't have to go to the doctor and feel like you got to hide stuff or you're embarrassed to say. That should be one of the safe spaces that you could sit and talk to your doctor and say, hey, I'm having these symptoms, and let's talk about it man to man. Or even if you don't have a male doctor, it doesn't matter. It still should be a safe place where you feel like you can have an open and honest conversation. So that's why I would first tell you, find a good primary care physician. Do your research, look at their reviews, find someone close to you and kind of go with that, because I actually moved around. I had a really good one at one time, and he ended up relocating. I was like, man, I've been with him for years, and I trusted him. Moved to someone else. I'm not saying they were horrible, but just, I don't know, something was amiss in that relationship. And I found another one from a referral. Talk to people, talk to other men, talk to other people who have really good primary care doctors, and say, who do you go to, and use that as a leverage and a starting point as well. So I go to my PCP, annual physical, just a normal routine physical. And I'll be honest, when they did the the blood work, the panel, I was really just looking for my cholesterol levels because I had been so focused on my heart. Getting my cholesterol levels to a normal range has been my goal. Stay in that normal range, do what I have to do and stay in that range, try to eat right, exercise. I don't exercise as much as I should. I can do a whole lot better, especially cardio. Even when I did, I would rather lift weights than to do cardio, but trying to get better. I'm not there yet. So eating right, not going to act like I'm a health guru in that category either. I love a good burger. You know, I love certain meats and stuff. I'm a big meat eater. I don't eat a lot of steak or stuff like that, but I like meat. You know, I like my beef and I like my different things like that, chicken of all sorts. But I would say even in my eating habits, I tried to change that over the past, from my 30s on. I eat a lot of, grilled salmon and vegetables and brown rice and all that stuff as well. So it's a balance, I'm not too extreme one way or the other. So get back to it. Annual physical. I had it done. And I'm going down. I get the results back. I always kind of look at my results even before I go back to the doctor to talk about it, because you can look at your results from your lab and it'll have it in green if it's all good, and if it's red, something's bad, something's yellow, is getting out of range. It's kind of self-explanatory from that perspective, from a color code, but you still have to dig into what those things are to see what they mean. So I looked at it, and even when the doctor called me back, it was like all levels, cholesterol perfect, everything back in range for my heart. So I'm happy about that. Everything is green. And then there was one area on my report, on my lab report, my blood work, that was red. And that was my PSA level. It was out of range. So again, I told you that range, I think, is from 2 to 4. I was at 4.9. I think 4.97 to be exact. And so, okay, I was like, okay, I'm for the first time out of range. What's this about, So try not to worry too much about it, but a little concerned. So again, good PCP, good doctor. He said, I'm going to refer you to a urologist. And what a urologist is going to do is dive a little deeper to see what is causing this it's called an elevated PSA when it's out of range. Go to the urologist that he referred me to, and he says, okay, elevated range, but then he started asking, are you having any other symptoms? So let me talk about the symptoms. Sometimes we don't attribute some things to something. We just know, I once was this way and now my body is another way. And sometimes you just chalk it up and just like, I'm getting older. It's just part of life. But sometimes our body is telling us something is going on. Sometimes our body is giving us these little red flags here and there to say, you might want to dig a little deeper into this. And so for me, being out of range was that flag. But the symptoms were, to be honest with you, I had some ED. And I think many men, as you get a certain age, you start dealing with ED early. Just depends on who you are. And you just think, there's something, pop some pills and you'll be fine, and you just keep moving on. But sometimes just having ED is an indicator of something, erectile dysfunction. And then from that, I moved on to frequent urination. Like, I felt like I would go to the bathroom or go to the restroom and just feel like I got to go back, or I'm not done. Like I didn't, like, my bladder wasn't completely, emptied. And it was this frequent urination that got more and more. But I didn't even think anything of that because, again, because of the heart condition, I was drinking a lot of water, because my cardiologist was like, you need to drink a lot of water because it's just good for your heart. And so I have to take in a lot of fluids. And because of that, I was thinking, that's why I'm urinating a lot. That's why I'm going to the bathroom a lot. I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't thinking about it. A large prostate would cause, excessive urination. When my mind didn't even cross that. I didn't even know anything about that. And so my urologist, I'm telling him these, here are my symptoms, and that's all I had. I didn't have really any other symptoms to really talk about except this elevated PSA now. And he said, okay, I'm African American, black. I'm of age now, I'm 52 years old, and I have it in my family because my father had prostate cancer. So I'm checking off all the boxes of someone where you need to investigate a little more. And so he said, this is what we're going to do. I like to get a good baseline. I like to see everything, and I like to see what's going on. So what he did was he said, I'm scheduling you for an MRI, and the MRI is going to give me some images and some details to actually see your prostate, to see if I can see anything, any tumors, anything that just seems outside of the ordinary. Let's get some pictures. Let's get some images. So schedule me for this MRI, and I had to prepare for that. So let me tell you, preparing for an MRI for your prostate is almost like preparing for a colonoscopy. So you got to have a very clean system. So there's different processes they go through, or you eat certain things or stop eating at certain times, but you got to be clean. You can't have anything in your system. So I think my treatment was preparing for it was enemas, those enema bottles that you squeeze in your butt. That, let me tell you, prepping for it was, I think, sometimes as hard as or harder than the actual getting the MRI done, because of the area they got to look at. Your bowel has to be completely cleansed. And that enema process was, I'm telling you, it's going to test your relationships, because like, you need to have a good relationship with your partner that you might need help for that, or somebody to hold that bottle and squeeze it for you and do all of that. Because I'm telling you, brother could not do it on his own. It wasn't natural. I just couldn't do it. And so the nurse RX, Aleisha, she helped me out and got me prepped for that. So I went in, system clean. I go in and I actually have the MRI done. The MRI itself is actually kind of tough. It depends on kind of how you are about enclosed spaces, because they put you in a tube. Because at first I thought, because they're just looking at my prostate, I just thought from the, my hip area down that's going to be in the tube, and my head was going to be outside. But that wasn't the case. I got there and they put my whole body in the tube. And so it was a bigger tube. I've been in I've had an MRI before where it's very small tube, very enclosed, and I really, really didn't like that. This was a little bit bigger MRI tube that they put you in, but it's still, you're enclosed, and you know what it is like to be in an enclosed space. And I don't like that. I have to close my eyes. I can't look. I have to keep my eyes shut the whole time. Just control your breathing, take your time. Don't panic, because you can panic in those MRIs and be pressing that button like, get me out of here, as quick as possible. But I try not to panic. I try to just pray, thoughts, think of music, anything. They even ask you want to play some music. They'll pipe music in or something to just calm you, because they know some people just cannot handle being in this enclosed space. Oh, I also want to tell you, let me back up for the rest of this MRI. You got to get the right one, or the best one, I should say, and it's non-invasive. It's called the 3T MRI for the prostate. The 3T is like double the amount of magnetic radiation, magnetic field, magnetic field that is used. And what it does is it gives the radiologist a clearer image and a clearer view of your prostate. So they can specifically catch things and see if there's any tumors, any cancers, anything. They can catch all that from the MRI. That's why we're doing it. That's part of it. But it's the 3T one that you want. And I'm going to tell you, in the beginning of the process, my urologist's office had booked me, told me to go to a specific radiation place who didn't have a 3T machine. And then I went another one. And then I went through this whole ordeal of just even trying to find a place that had 3T. Because a lot of them don't have 3T. So if you're going to get an MRI done for your prostate, you want 3T because it's non-invasive. Otherwise, I think the other method use is some type of prod or something they put in your rectal as part of the MRI scan. But if you go 3T, you don't have that, and you have much clearer images. So get 3T. So make sure you, first off, you go to your urologist is sending you to a facility that has 3T so you can avoid all that. So I had to sit through that. It was pretty long. I feel like I was in that tube for about 45 minutes or so. It's a long time you're in there. They will kind of count you down and say 10 more minutes, 5 more minutes, whatever, and kind of let you know how far you have. But it's a process to get through that, and I made it through that part. So I got the MRI done. So I have to wait for the results. And a lot of this I'm sharing with you it's a lot of time. I'm sharing all these things. It's going to sound like it all happened like that, but it did not happen that fast because I wasted probably 2 months just trying to finally get the right facility for the 3T MRI. I got the runaround. I was actually showing up. I'm talking about I had prepped and everything and actually showed up the day to get my MRI, and they're saying, I'm sorry, we don't have a 3T machine. Like, should somebody have shared this with me before I showed up after I prepped? Now, that's a whole nother story to prep and do all that stuff, and then I had to do it again. I had to get another appointment at the right place that had 3T, prep all over again, and show up and make sure you got everything. Bring your paperwork, make sure they know why you're coming, make sure ask questions. Just be as detailed as you can be, because sometimes those who's supposed to be looking out on your behalf are not, and you'll get there at the appointment and find out you're not ready and they're not going to do it, and you've wasted a lot of time preparing for something that's not going to happen. So 45 minutes in the tube, got it done, waiting for the results. Took about a week or so, or maybe 2 weeks to get the results back. Then the urologist calls me back, and we look at the results. So the results of it was they did find something that's not normal. They found a spot, they called it a spot, an area of my prostate that showed in the MRI. They could clearly see it. They knew kind of the size of it and everything. But that MRI still, it was inconclusive, is what they said. They said, we don't know if it's cancerous or not. We know we see something. We know we see some small area, tumor area, lesion. A lesion is the actual term, I think it's called. We see a lesion in an area of your prostate, and that's all we know. We don't see anything else. So because, again, family history, black man, 52 years old, my doctor's like, we got to keep going. So the next thing he said, let's do we got to do a biopsy. Biopsy, they go in and they take samples throughout your prostate. So they take samples from the spot that they found. That's why it's good to get the MRI, because they're not shooting in the dark. They have a target now. Because without a target, because you can go right to a biopsy. Like if you have elevated PSA, you might have a urologist that just says, let's just get a biopsy. And that's fine too. I mean, you can go but they're shooting in the dark. And when I say shooting in the dark, they're really they're just taking samples. I think it was like 12 samples just randomly throughout the prostate. But if you have the MRI first, that's why I'm kind of emphasizing, you probably want to get the MRI first. And then if you need a biopsy because they see something, they can be more specific and they can go to that spot. So they went to the spot that they saw, the lesion, and got samples. And then outside and around it, other areas of the prostate, they got samples. So I think it was a total like 12 or so samples. So I had to wait for those results. Again, more time. Week or two, that comes back. And let me share something also that the urologist said to me during this process. Even though I had an elevated PSA, he said, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything to be worried about. You're pretty much in good health. I've seen men with elevated PSA and it was nothing. Sometimes you can have elevated PSA and it's just an enlarged prostate. So he actually just thought I had an enlarged prostate, and that's all this was going to be about because of my symptoms, and everything else was pretty good with me. So he had kind of put my mind at ease before the biopsy, and that was good and bad. It was good because I wasn't stressing about it, but it was kind of bad because I think my mind had hung on to the words that he said, that I don't think I'm going to find anything. This is just kind of routine. And so I was just like, I blew it off, and I just wasn't worried about it. So I remember the day where I had the follow-up appointment to see him after the biopsy results came in. Now, and let me just say this before I jump into the details of that, because I'm trying to give you some specifics. That biopsy, after you have it, you're gonna have some things afterward. Like the first day or two or whatever, you will see blood in your urine. That's normal. I'm calling these things out for you. So when you're urinating and it's kind of pinkish, reddish, that's normal. That's because of the prostate of picking at it, pricking it. You're going to have some blood, and so there are other symptoms as well with it. So it's not a pain thing. It's not painful. You don't feel anything. They put you out when you do it. When you come out, you don't really feel anything, but I'm just warning you about some of those things like that. So just look it up. If you're scheduled for a biopsy or your prostate, look up at the side effects of what's considered normal. So when those things are happening, you won't freak out about it. You'll be like, okay, yeah, I read about that, so this is normal. And it goes on for weeks. So I just want you to know that some of these symptoms after a biopsy, it's not like it passes after 1 or 2 days. You may see these symptoms for weeks. A mini-man, I read about it, and it talked about even the semen, it will be brownish, it will be, different colors, and it won't be normal. And that can go for, they say, 6 to 8 weeks. So I read about all of that. And so a lot of that stuff, I just want you to be aware when that is happening, you kind of understand what's going on, and you don't flip out about it. So I get there the day of the scheduled appointment with the urologist. Now, what I did not know at the time, and this was a long time to finally get the results back. It took several weeks to get these biopsy results back. It's not a short turnaround over 1 week. No, I felt like it was 3 to 4 weeks later before I even got the results. So during that time when you're waiting, try not to stress about it. Try not to think about it. I'm going to tell you something else I did. This is just personally for me. I didn't research a lot of stuff. I didn't read a lot of stuff, because I'm one of those people, I research by nature, everything. And what I didn't want to do, I didn't want to go down the road of being on WebMD and Googling this and finding all these different things out and thinking all these negative thoughts when it may or may not be the case. And so during that time period, I really tried to stay away from over-researching everything to do with prostate cancer. I really tried to not, I just stayed away from it. Because it just does something to you mentally. And I just didn't want to go down that road. And so I'm in the doctor's office. He had not read the results yet. He was actually, as I'm sitting there with him, this was his first time looking at the results of that biopsy. Now, remember, he said, I don't think it's going to be anything. I don't think we have anything to worry about. But now here we are, and he's scanning through my results. And I never forget, he paused and he said, these are not the results I thought we would see. So at this point, everything shifts in my mind. Here we go. He says, yes, you have prostate cancer. It's something about when you know and hear about other people go through things in life. You hear about, you have family members, or you know of someone, or just your local news, or reading an article of someone with cancer. And And you have empathy, you have sympathy, and all these things, but it's something about when things hit home for you, it becomes very real. And I never hoped that I would hear the words that I have cancer of any sort in my body. But to hear those words come out of his mouth to tell me I had prostate cancer was gut wrenching. And I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna keep it 100. That I had to, at first I was taking in the information, my logical self. I'm usually a very logical person, and I take everything. Maybe it's the background that I'm in. I'm in tech, and in tech, most tech people were just very logical thinking kind of people and stuff. So I started off it's just information, it's just data, and I'm just like, okay, give me the data, doc. But then something hit, and it switched from just information and data to, man, my mind, my emotions really started, man, I have cancer. I'm only 50 something. I have a, young son. And so all the negative things you start thinking about, for some reason, when you get that diagnosis, especially when it's cancer, you immediately start thinking about, this is it. How many months do I have? Or you go to the extreme in your mind, at least my mind does. So it was a gut punch. And I told him I had to lay down. Had a little section here on the side in his office. I said, can I just lay down for a minute? And I'm processing this in his office real time. And he was all right. He's a good doctor. So, and he's a black physician, a urologist. And so he was like, take your time. This wasn't the first time I'm sure he had to give this diagnosis to someone. And I had to just take it in. I had to just pause for a minute, as my mind is racing about all of the possibilities and things this may mean for me. And he said, you want to tell your wife? And I said, yes, but I needed him, because when you're going through that, when you get that diagnosis, your mind just goes. Like, there's no way I could have left that office, went back home, told my wife that I have prostate cancer, and she's going to then start asking me a lot of questions. And I probably wouldn't have remembered half the things he said, because from the time he said you have it, it's like the rest is wah, 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 wah. It's like Charlie Brown. I don't remember much of the details after that. I'm just being honest with you. So I said, you mind if I call my wife on the phone, put it on speaker, and I'm going to tell her, but I want you to, she's going to ask questions because she's a nurse. That's what she does. He called her. I told her, I said, look, got the results back. I have prostate cancer. I know she was probably a little stunned because, again, she thought, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And I said, now I'm going to let the doctor tell you any questions you have for him. And then they had a conversation. So she was really good. Maybe it was her medical training kicked in, and she just switched into that gear of, let me just listen to what he has to say. She had some questions to him, so forth and so on. They had a conversation. And I'm still laying there. I'm still kind of just trying to get myself together so I can even drive home. And that's something else I would probably share with you and say, if you're going to get the results of your biopsy or something like that from prostate, man, you may want to take somebody with you. You may want to take your spouse, your partner with you, just in case. You never know what the news. We pray that the news is going to be positive, but just in case the news is not as positive or not what you are hoping or expecting, I think it's good to have someone there that just to be able to get all the information from the doctor, because you're going to be kind of mentally out of it. And also maybe just to drive you home, just to make sure you're good, because you can be completely out of it. So that's something I would just recommend that you do. Let me go into the details of the results now. There was called Gleason levels of cancer, prostate cancer. A Gleason 6 is considered very low risk, low grade. A Gleason score of 7 is considered intermediate risk level grade. And a Gleason score, I believe, of 8, 9, 10 is considered high risk, high grade, or very high risk, very high grade. And I could be wrong with these, so please look it up. But that's how I understand these Gleason scores that they put you in when you get diagnosed with prostate cancer. I was diagnosed with a Gleason score of 6, so I'm considered low grade, very low risk, early detected, and it's localized, it's in my prostate, nothing outside the prostate. That's why the imaging, again, is important, because it can show if there was any lesions or tumors or whatever. They can show if it's in the prostate and outside the prostate in areas, because the MRI catches all of that. So again, another, just putting it out there about the importance of that MRI that you wouldn't catch if you had just done a biopsy. So thankfully, low risk, low grade, but still have prostate cancer, diagnosed. Okay, so that's my Gleason score. That's where I'm at. And then now I'm trying to ask the doctor what's his recommendation. Now that about 30 minutes or so of trying to just gather myself, now I'm going back to the logical side of me. The logic is kicking in of I got questions now. Like, now I'm switching to the fight mode. Now I'm switching to what do we have to do mode. Like, how can we beat this mode? Now I already switched gears. It probably took me 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes. I'm already switching gears to, all right, what do we need to do now? And I noticed he didn't want to give me, at the time, any like recommendation of what really to do, except have a consult with the experts. There are several different treatment options. And he just suggested have a consult with whatever options you're leaning towards, or maybe have a consult with all of them and then make a final decision. So some of the most common treatment options are like IRT, which is intense radiation therapy. There's proton therapy treatment that's a more precise kind of attacking the spot or the areas of the prostate itself, I should say, the whole prostate. And it's just more, it's not spread out like IRT, it's just more targeted, and where I was really leaning. There's the seed implants where they actually put these radioactive seeds inside of your prostate, and I don't know if they're good for 10, 20, however many years, but they're in your body, they're in your prostate, and they're killing the cancerous cells. That's an option. And there might be there's the removal, of course, the surgery. They actually have the prostate removed. I thought just right off, even from there, that I don't know, but I didn't know enough at the time to be honest with you to say that was an aggressive treatment or not. I just didn't know enough. But there are several options that he's sharing them with me. And so my plan of action coming out of that office was I'm gonna get a consult with each type of treatment option, and then I'm gonna make a decision of which way to go. So I left there and I got these consults set up. And you also go through this little period of, when you first find out, that first day or couple days, of who you tell, who you want to tell, who should you tell, if anyone. Of course, my wife knew, immediate family, like told her family. And then on my side, I think I finally, she kept getting on me. It's like, you need to tell your family. I don't know. I just felt like I'm just going to go through this. I don't have to make a big deal out of it. And, but it's important to just have people in your corner praying for you and hoping the best for you, and they mean the best, and helping you however they can. But it's a journey you have to go on. But it's good you have somebody to support you throughout the journey. So I think I told my sisters, I have 2 sisters, and I told each of them, and because one of my sisters is a nurse, and had that conversation with them, and just kind of started it from there. I actually never did tell my mom. I just didn't want to, my mom's 84 years old. Not that she couldn't handle it. She's been through it all, seen it all, went through it with my dad. But I just didn't want to stress her out about it. That's just me personally. So, you know, I just felt like as time gets closer to doing whatever I need to do, I'll have that conversation as well. So let me move on from there. Diagnosed, moving on. I started having the consults. And so I met with each one. And the first one I had was the one I was least likely leaning towards, which was the seed implants. And I'm going to tell you why least likely. Well, let me first give you a little heads up. If you don't already know about doctors and stuff, they can sometimes be much like any business. At the end of the day, it's about partnerships and investments they have and everything. Like sometimes you might have, like for instance, my urologist, he does his practices in one ambulatory center that he has a vested interest in, like he's part owner of it. That's why when you go to these ambulatory centers, they'll have paperwork at the beginning say you need to know that your doctor is part of the ownership group and so forth, so on. Are you okay with this? They'll share all that. It's all disclosed. But what I'm saying is sometimes doctors also, they will steer you in directions to people that they have relationships and partnerships with. And sometimes they have a financial vested interest in that. So just be warned of that. My doctor at first, the only recommendation he gave me was this one oncologist who does the seed implants, because I found out they have a relationship. That individual does all his procedures at the same ambulatory center that he uses. So I'm sure money in his pocket as part of the process. So just be aware. So I just thought it was a little odd that of all of his not giving recommendations, the one place that he did give a recommendation was the person that does the implants, and they work together in the same facility. So I thought that was a little, just made note of that. So I went and spoke with him. I really wasn't interested in that route, but I wanted to cover my bases. Seed implants just wasn't for me. It's just something about just having seeds, radioactive. I know they say they're very low radioactive seeds. It's not like they're emanating out your body, but I've read and researched so much, I just wasn't comfortable with that route and other side effects and things to that. I just didn't want to go that route. And also, the doctor's office, the whole thing, like you got to be really comfortable as a patient. When you go somewhere that they're potentially going to be the ones treating you, I don't know about you, but I observe everything. I observe, how the staff, how their processes, are they up to date, or they seem out of date or antiquated in their technologies or their ways. And this place I thought I stepped into the 80s. Like it was so old school with some of the things they were doing, all the way up to the point when they're checking you in and getting you in their system. You're sitting out in the waiting area with all the other patients that are there, and it was a lot of people. And they bring you out, and on a piece of paper, handwritten piece of paper, it had like your date of birth, and you hold it up to your face like a mugshot. And she pulls out a digital camera. I'm talking about the digital cameras from the 90s. I'm not talking about like the smartphone, your smartphone cameras. No, a digital camera from the 90s. She pulls it out, takes a picture of me holding up my, it's my little mugshot in there. And I was just like, man, if this is how they do business, I don't know if I want them touching me. I got questions about their technologists and their processes. But that's just me. Again, that's my background, so I'm looking at everything. But then the doctor himself, there was something, there was no synergy between he and I. He came off like a used car salesman. He came off like, I am selling you on seed implants as the way to go, and nothing else compares to it. And because he was pushing so hard for his treatment option and knocking the other treatment options, I was turned off. Again, it was that used car salesman vibe. And that's not what I'm looking for, or you should be looking for as you're going through this. You want a genuine doctor, oncologist that wants the best for you. And if the best is not their treatment option, I want them to say that. I want them to be able to say, you know what? That option 3 might be better than this option for these reasons, side effects wise, your age, health, all these things. But he wasn't like that at all. All he was like, how soon can I get you booked? and get you in and start implanting these seeds. And I was like, I'm out. That was my first consult. My second consult was with proton therapy. But before I even go to that second one, let me share a little bit about the importance of when you share with certain people that you know care about you when you get this diagnosis, because I shared it with my father-in-law, and it just so happened he had 3 good friends of his who all had prostate cancer, who all have it and have went through treatment options. And amazingly, they all had different type of treatment options. So he reached out to them, he connected me with them, put us on 3-way, met them, all great men. Shout out to all of you. You know who you are. You helped me in the process. Your words, not only of encouragement, your realness, your genuineness, you helped me out tremendously. So thank you to my father-in-law and to the men that he introduced me with. Your conversations really helped me, because when I talked to them, I got to get the real. I got to get the real details on their treatment options, the pros, the cons, the side effects, all of that. So that was big. If you can actually talk to men who have been through whatever option you're leaning towards, talk to them. Talk as many as possible. And so they really walked me through. And in that process, one of them had proton therapy. And I just don't know. He just seemed like of the bunch, like it was the least invasive. It had the least side effects. And it was just like, it just found like the outcomes were all good for all these men. They're all still, they're all 10, 15, 20 years removed from their diagnosis of prostate cancer. They're all doing really well. They each talked about what side effects that they have, but it was nothing too major with them. ED with some of them, frequent urination, kind of some of the things, because, you know, kind of like when you have a large prostate anyway, you're going to have some of those symptoms. And there are things you can do for that. But, you know, they all gave me their perspective, and that was a big help. And so listening to them and then going through the consults, I went to the proton therapy consult, really connected with that doctor, loved everything about him and his staff. They were so organized. And he wasn't selling me on just proton therapy, even though that's what they primarily did. He was selling me on what he felt like was the best, kind of the best option. And like, but this one is not bad either. So I like that he was kind of unbiased in a sense. And I was ready to go and do the proton therapy immediately. I was ready to just go get treatment done. And I went down the process. I was going to go ahead and go proton therapy. And then let's talk about insurance companies. Yes, insurance. So also, if you don't already know, the insurance companies, at the end of the day, is about the bottom line. It's about the cost. Where from us, we're looking at it from what's going to be the best outcomes. And so for them, they said all the data pointed to that you're going to have the same outcomes by, let's say, doing IRT as you would doing proton. The problem for the insurance company, proton therapy costs maybe twice as much, if not more, than IRT or seed implants or some other treatment option. So my insurance company, they were out. We are not paying for proton therapy. So I don't know the insurance company, some of the men I've talked to who had it, that they had no problems of getting it done, but mine was not going to approve it, even put an appeal in, denied. I even had a conversation with them personally, denied, said they're not doing it, said they'll do any other treatment but that because the cost. And they said, you still have the same outcomes, same long-term outcomes of it. We're not going to pay for anything that's going to have the same. But I wanted less side effects. I wanted to be more targeting the prostate, not spread. I had all these thoughts from my research, but it is what it is. So I had 2 consults for proton, and I'm actually glad I did, because the one place, also, let me say this about proton therapy. They're not everywhere. So even if you're near a cancer center, I don't know what city you live in, you may not have a cancer center or a place nearby, A lot of them don't have proton therapy. It's only a few. And we just happen to have 2 in my state. And this one was a couple of cities over that I was going to have to uproot, move there, and be there for about 2 months. Because once you start any of these treatments, they're all the same. They're consecutive days. You have to get it done. You can't like take it and say, I'll be back next weekend and get the rest. No, you have to consecutively, once you start the process, you have to keep getting it done every day, that treatment. And treatment may not last, they said, maybe an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. You're out, but you got to come back every day. And for about a month and a half, 2 months in many situations. So I was going to have to uproot the family or whatever, or go myself to kind of do this anyway. And then I found one a little closer, a city closer to us, but still not in my city, but a little better. And still the same thing. But there was something that was said in this second proton therapy consult that really started opening my eyes to something I hadn't considered. And he said, you're at very low risk, low grade, early detected. Have you considered active surveillance? And I didn't know what that meant. He said, active surveillance is when you don't get anything done. You don't radiate the body. You don't do anything to it. You really just, you monitor it, but you actively monitor it. So what that means is, I don't know if it's every 6 months, every 3 to 6 months, you go get your PSA level checked again. So if there's any change in that PSA level, they'll catch it and say, okay, I see this is climbing. Let's check again. You get a biopsy done at least annually. So you're getting a biopsy annually. You're every few months, you're checking that PSA level. You're getting no treatment done. It's just called active surveillance. And at first, when I first heard it, I kind of blew it off because in your mind, you're just thinking, I want this killed. I want this out of my body. I want this destroyed. And however I can deal with this, you want to just deal with it. But he wasn't the only one. I had another consult. And this was with the doctor that's IRT. Really liked him, connected with him. And then I had a last consult I had was with the oncologist that actually removes the prostate. And he had a really good PA. And I'll tell you, the staff, again, that you're working with makes the difference. This PA was so detailed. And she said again, they were talking about active surveillance, just like the last one and the one before that. Also mentioned to me because I'm Gleason score 6, very low risk, early detected, localized, you checking all the boxes. But this one's a little different. They said, to be sure, we can give you or do what's called a decipher test. And a decipher test is when they go in and they do a little more analysis on your biopsy results. So they dive a little deeper. So what it does is to tell them how aggressive is your cancer responding or acting. Because what she was saying to me is, you could be low grade, low risk today, but you could have cancer that's acting very aggressive. And if that's the case, that might also be information to say, no, you want to get treatment done. And she said, but it takes almost 2 months really to get these results back. So it takes some time. But one thing they all stressed when you're at the level I'm at, so any of you out there, if you're at that Gleason level 6 or 7 or whatever, and you're not at high risk and it's localized, don't feel like you got to rush and get something done immediately. Just kind of go and talk and have those consults and make an informed decision for you is what I would just say. Don't feel like, that's what they all kept telling me, to relax, and don't feel like you got to immediately run out and get something done in the next 6 months or less, because that's not the case. So I'm waiting right now on the decipher test to come back. And that will be it for me. That will be the telltale of, am I going to do something? Which I'll probably do IRT option route if I do. Or if I'm going to just do active surveillance. And the reason why they even recommend active surveillance, they say, because once you start treating the body for cancer, once you start these radiation treatments and stuff, there are side effects. They all have side effects. Whether you get proton, it's supposed to have less side effects because it's more targeted, or whether you have IRT that's a little more spread, or C's implanted in you, or the removal of the prostate that has some risk, of course, because it's a surgery and nerves can be damaged, and they tell you about that, even though it's a small percentage of that happening. But they were like, you're too young for that. You're only 50 something, and we just don't want anything, side effects from that you're living now. Your quality of life has changed because you've had some procedure or something that where before you wasn't even dealing with that. So active surveillance may be a real thing if that Decipher test comes back and says, yeah, your cancer is also not acting aggressively at all. Let's put you on a schedule, check that PSA on a regular cadence, get that biopsy on an annual basis, and let's wait this thing out and see how it's responding. That's where I'm at right now. I should get the results back next month in April. Once I get those results back, then I will know exactly which way I'm going. Either I'm going to get treated or I'm going to just do surveillance of it. But before I close this out, I just want to say one thing. All the men, if I hadn't said it in the beginning of it, if you're a black man or man of color, you're over the age of 40, please, 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 and especially if there's any family history of any man in your family having prostate cancer, especially if it was your father, man, I really emphasize that you just get an annual physical, and part of that physical, get your PSA checked. Find out if you're in range. That's all I'm asking you to do, because early detection, I know a lot of times with men, we're big about, not going to the doctor. We tough it out. We feel like we're fine. And sometimes we live with symptoms and we're ignoring the red flags that our body is telling us all the time. And you may have had some red flags for years. Your body is giving you indicators. Something's not right. This is not normal. And then you might not have any indicators. You should just do it because you're over the age of 40, you have it in your family, and you want to be around for those who love you, especially if you have kids. So if you're 40 years or older, get checked. Get a rectal exam, the PSA at the minimum. Both would be even better because it gives you a more comprehensive view of what's going on with your prostate. And then they'll take it from there. And if you go down the road and you need more tests, I recommend doing an MRI and then the biopsy. That way they can see if they see anything and they can target the biopsy a little better. So I just wanted to take the time. I just wanted to share this with you. I'm going to be coming back on, sharing my journey with you as I move through the process. I hope to take you all the way to the end, whatever the end may be. But, I just wanted to give back and just hope that anything I've shared, anything I can share in the future will help you out as you maybe started this process or you just got a diagnosis. And we're going to be in this thing together. If you have any specific questions you have for me, please drop a question in the comments. My wife checks the comments all the time. So if you have anything you want to share, anything you want to ask me, any more detail that I can go into in a question you give, I'll be happy to reach out and share any information that I have for you. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I'm hoping to share some more. And I will be talking to you soon. Take care. I've enjoyed it. Thank you all. The thenurserx channel will be seeing more of me. So shout out to my wife, Aleisha, for staying on me. So I'm looking forward to more. Talk to you soon.